Hey, John Hardison here with you. Let's take a look today at multiple choice questions. Now, I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but many of you will be faced with the challenging task of succeeding on multiple choice exams throughout your life. Many of you will be doing so here soon with the American Lit EOCT or maybe the AP language exam. So let's take a look and let's get started at some things you can do to better prepare. First thing is, let's take a look at habits of mind, HOM. If we refer to HOM anytime this year, make sure you know we're talking about habits of mind. And all that means is to simply be aware of your mental processes as you work through reading. Now, I'm the same way. I've read a passage before, maybe a page long, maybe even longer, and I've gotten to the end of it and I was not engaged and I had no clue of what I just read. And then I realized that my mind had been wandering to other thoughts the entire time. All we need to do is to make sure we are aware of those processes, those mental processes, as we work through our reading or our passages or our multiple choice questions. The more we become aware and bring awareness to that, the more we can discipline our minds, even when we're reading challenging text or maybe something that's not very interesting to us. So we also can do this. If you have a hard time focusing while reading passages and answering multiple choice questions, you can be sure to underline, highlight keywords. So when you underline or highlight keywords, you can make sure you're still staying engaged. You're looking for context clues. You're looking to make sure you don't just move forward without understanding the sentence or the words that you just read and worked through before you. Another thing you can do is to challenge the text by jotting down questions next to the relative paragraphs. Think about how many times you've watched a movie with a friend who has already seen that same movie, and you probably at some time asked, hey, what's going to happen? Is this person going to die, or is this going to happen? And then hopefully that person with you says you'll just have to watch. Well, take that same mindset and jot down questions as you're working through a text or a multiple choice question. You also, for those artists, you can draw key symbols that are representative of what you are studying or what you are learning. I have had many students in class who like to draw, say that they draw symbols or stick figures or whatever it may be to keep them engaged. Now, the last thing is don't be afraid to reread any text that is confusing at first. I do this all the time, especially if it's a challenging text or passage. So make sure you reread it. And I like to say work through the reading. So unless you just picked up a novel that you can't wait to get your hands on, you've been waiting for it to come out in print for a year, unless you do that, chances are a lot of the times you may be reading something that is prescribed, whether it's for your job or maybe it's a bill that comes in the mail or it's taking a class that you have to have credit for. Either way, you can work through challenging text and you can work through things that you normally would not read. And then, of course, when you learn this skill, you can conquer anything. And then when you do pick up something of your choice, you'll understand it in a much deeper level. Let's take a look at our process of elimination. So POE refers to process of elimination. Number one, let's make sure you thoroughly understand the question. Let's take a look here at a quotation from Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the next 4 hours sharpening my axe." He simply meant, hey, I want to understand the problem first before I try to create a solution. And Einstein was quoted as saying that if he had 1 hour to save the world, he would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. So two very reputable people to base our plan of attack off of. Let's look at number two for our POE, our process of elimination. Number two, be sure to chunk the question if needed to better understand it. Many questions are written in a verbose or wordy manner, and some questions are so long that the meaning at the beginning is lost after the reader reaches the end. So here in a moment, I'll show you a couple of questions and I'll show you how to break them down. And just remember, any question that is too long, too wordy, or just is written in a complicated manner, you could easily chunk that and break it down to where you understand the first part and then the second part and then the third part, and then you can attack that question with that knowledge. Number three, eliminate any answer choices that are not possible answers. On most multiple choice exams with 4 choices per question, at least 2 can be eliminated immediately. Obviously, this improves your chances from 25% to 50%. Now, if we're looking at an AP language exam with 5 choices and maybe sometimes 3 or 4 of those are very, very close to the answer, yeah, it's a little bit different. An AP language exam or an AP Lit exam is much tougher than an ELCT. However, we can still apply this process and eliminate or do our best to eliminate any answers that just seem bogus. Number 4. Reason out your final 2 choices. If you have spent time understanding the question and eliminating the bogus choices, the answer is relatively simple by then. If you've read your text, if you've been studying, if you've been engaged, when you get to that multiple choice question and eliminate the answers that are not even close, then really the answer almost seems to be just blinking at you. It's waiting on you to circle the answer. And let's go to a little practice. Here we go. Let's go to number 12. So let's work this one out. Here we go. Looking at number 12 right here. In the passage below, so it's going to be right here is the little passage I want to read. It says inhabitants of the deep refers to. So I know I'm looking at this part of the passage and I want to know what it refers to. Now, in case you don't remember, this is from Olata Equiano's narrative about his slave travel on this slave trip. So let's take a look here at the passage. Often did I think many of the inhabitants of the deep much more happy than myself. So obviously he is comparing himself there to the inhabitants of the deep. But who are the inhabitants of the deep, or what are the inhabitants of the deep? He says here, I envied them the freedom they enjoyed. So he compares himself to them and he wishes he had that freedom. Let's take a look. A, fish and other sea creatures. Is that a possible answer? Could they be free as they swim in the ocean and he's on the slave ship? It's a possible answer. B, the slaves who were below deck. Now, if you remember, many of those were shackled and they were in horrible conditions for many, many days or weeks at a time. So I don't think they had much freedom. Bogus answer, or bogus choice, I should say. The slaves who had jumped overboard. No, because they're probably dead. They may have drowned. They may have been eaten by a shark. Who knows, but no freedom there. And then this one here, D, the children who had fallen into the necessary tubs. Very, very dangerous there. Don't see much freedom there. So this one is relatively easy. When you take a look at it and you eliminate the erroneous choices, you'll see that A is the obvious answer and it can be validated by the text. So fish and other sea creatures are the inhabitants of the deep that he was referring to. Now let's take a look at one more. Here we go. Let's go back to the red color. And at certain moments in the interesting narrative of the life of Olata Equiano, Equiano was sufficiently ill and uncomfortable to make him feel blank. Cite details from the selection to support your answer choice. We're just going to look at our multiple choice answer here. But let's take a look. A, that he wished he could create a small area in which he could separate himself from others. Can't be validated by the text if you remember your reading. B, that he wanted to be a fish or some other creature of the ocean. Possible, can be validated. C, brave enough to ask to be brought upstairs to get some relief. Possible, maybe can be validated. And indeed that he wanted the comfort of having other children around him. Not validated by the text. Now if you look at these two right here, there is one that is easy to be validated by the text, and of course it does relate to the last one we looked at, number 12. We mark out C and we go with B because it is the one that can be validated most by the text, and the other 3 answers are not really possible. So that's a look at number 12 and number 16 from Olata Equiano's The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olata Equiano. And please remember that although I did not draw, I simply underlined and stayed engaged with this text. You did see me use process of elimination and my habits of mind. I can tell you right now that I did not wander off. And I do want to say the only reason I did not draw is because I am not a very good artist. I hope this helps, and I wish you well on all your multiple choice exams. Until later, see ya.